Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Mai-Coh, yes, a member of the Midnight Society science team. It is always good to see you make your way into the darkness of the Fox Den to once again nerd out and make sure we are learning imperative information. Well, yes, even a vampire needs to feed sometimes, and I have been so tired lately. But now that Mai-Coh has released my shackles, it is once again time to take a walk into the darkness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back once again to the Fox Den for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Yes, one of my best friends and one of the scientists who works hand in hand with, yes, the Midnight Society official scientific team. We have Mai-Coh, who has again found her way around the late night fire as we burn the timber to figure out what is going on. And also to the audience, if you are interested in wondering what that little sneak peek was for Camp Nightmare Fuel, it will be a new podcast that, of course, one of my hosts here, yes, Barb Hartman, and myself will be diving into a ton of things. We will keep the Dogman and missing people and prehistoric and modern day predator behaviors here. And we will keep, yes, the Bigfoot stuff over on Barb's page. But on Camp Nightmare Fuel, we will dive into unsolved mysteries, cryptids, alien abductions, interesting historical disasters, anything that can fall into the realm of Nightmare Fuel. And guess what? You will be seeing a bunch of the hosts from what? Yes, Midnight Lycanthropy and the Midnight Society over there as well. Mai-Coh, how the heck are you?
Hey, Star Fox. I am so glad to be back. I am doing really well tonight. Yeah, it's awesome to be here.
Appreciate you, my friend. Yes, you are always super busy, but you always do pop in. And to the audience, yes, you really got to check out her artwork. A majority of the magnificent images you see in my videos, yes, Mai-Coh is part of that production team and sends me a ton of outstanding art. So what I'm going to do actually from here on out is in the description of every video, not just the ones her and I do together. I'm going to have that link up there for you to check out her store because, yes, I've had numerous comments about loving my artwork and such. And just as my disclaimer says, I do have Mai-Coh. Few of my other friends, I do use some AI and I do some of my own stuff. But yes, that would be great if you could check out what she's doing.
I appreciate the plug. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. Um, wow. Well, I'm super excited about what we're going to talk about tonight. And I'm really excited to hear about, goodness, that Camp Nightmare Fuel. That's going to be some gripping stuff. So I'm definitely going to tune in for that. Can't wait to see what you guys come up with. It's going to be really great.
Wow. Appreciate the kudos right back. And yeah, that's what friends are for. And you've been nothing but extremely kind to me and actually try to help me out. And you do not siphon and suck my energy and my life force out of me, which many
Good.
people do, which is a big reason why I do not have many friends in life. It's by choice. I am sure plenty of people wish they were friends with me. I don't really care. People stress me out a lot. And I usually tend to stay within my tribe that I have found and tend to spend a lot of time with my squirrel and other things that don't stress me out.
Right, there you go. I mean, you might be a vampire, but you're not an energy vampire. So I enjoy talking to you too. And it's really
Yes.
fun. It's really fun diving into this stuff and like making the visuals for it, whether it's, going out in the real world, taking photos or, making art, using digital AI, even my hand paint. I know you have a lot of my drawings, hand sketch stuff for the stuff that just can't be made any other way. It's all super fun. So I'm really glad I get to do this. It's very, very fun.
It's epic. I mean, to the audience, yes, the images that we have of the 18,000-year-old, what we believe, Dogman, because, yeah, technically those scientists reached out to us, shared us, but guess what? We still don't own those images. I don't play with that, even if technically it might have been okay for me to show that. I still am not playing with that. That's why we had Mai-Coh draw that. And all kinds of excellent things. I mean, the hand-drawn cub that we talked about with the cave lion. So yeah, it's really definitely great stuff. And I swear you read my mind sometimes because I'll wake up, right? And I'll just have like a bombshell of epic photos. And I'll be like, yo, dude, I needed this type of photo. I needed this type of
That's
one.
great.
Yeah,
That's
it's really
great.
stuff.
So we're on the same creative wavelength there. That's perfect. Yeah, we
Seriously,
have some fairly asynchronous communication sometimes because like my schedule and your schedule, like, I usually am up fairly really early in the morning and then I go to bed probably right around when you're really getting going. So like it's nice when our schedules actually like overlap like this if we can actually talk. It's super cool. But despite being on different like, you know, like sleep cycles, we do seem to be on a pretty similar creative wavelength, which is awesome.
Yes, that is so true, and it is so funny because I've always been like that. To my late mom, I definitely get that from her. Just like the whole creature features things, she'd be up all night, and yeah, I've
That's
just
cool.
always been a night owl. For some reason, in my head, I always thought the cool stuff was coming on, the cool horror movies, the cool everything, the MTV videos I'm not supposed to be watching during the day. You know what I
Well,
mean?
why would
Just
you watch something like that at 10 a.m., right? Like, bleh.
yeah, yeah, all the cool shows like Autumn Williams and Mysterious Encounters on Outdoor
Oh
Learning
man,
Network. Literally, all this
yes.
stuff comes on at like 10 p.m., 11
Comes
p.m.
on
You not got
super
school the
late.
next day, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's nothing like a little eerie something something to send you off to sleep or
I know.
just fuel your wakefulness all night. I don't know. Honestly, I'm a night owl too. I only get up early because I have young children and I have to drive them all over creation. So maybe someday I'll left to my own devices, I'll probably go back to my nocturnal ways.
Yeah, squad up, right?
Anyway,
I mean, you don't really have a
yeah,
choice in that matter. That's like
right.
little brother down the street. He's got a little squad up too, so it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a grind. It's okay.
Yes, I definitely don't need children myself because I have enough nieces and nephews now that, oh my goodness, I can go play with them and get them wound up and then be like, yo, take them back, and not have to
Yeah, exactly.
deal
When
with
you're done, you can just turn them back over, and it's hey, but still, you're still benefiting them. They get to have time with their uncle, and parents get a break. So everybody wins.
Yeah. And it's so funny because one of my nieces and my sister-in-law, she is from Taiwan, and
Mm.
they have like these really cool treats and things, and our mom's come over before, but obviously I struggle to speak English, so I can't speak Cantonese. You know what I mean? So, but like my niece and obviously my sister-in-law and my brother, obviously because he's married, she speaks
Yeah,
English too. But
yeah.
moral of the story is my niece now, who's like 4, can speak Spanish, English, and like Cantonese. She's balling. But this is
That's
before she,
amazing. She's
yes,
going places.
this is before she even spoke, though. She hands me a Taiwanese treat, Like I said, I
Oh.
don't read Taiwanese. I don't even know it's a treat. So all of a sudden, I'm going to open it for my niece, right? Everyone else at the table's talking. My little brother had gone to the men's room to wash his hands for dinner, or something with like
Hmm.
my sister-in-law, and they come out, and I'd opened it up, and she's eating it. Like it's basically a Taiwanese like fruit roll up, but like way better. It's like dehydrated
Oh,
kind of like fruit. It looks like it's decent for you. But either way, my little brother
amazing.
and yeah, his wife look at, hey, how'd she get that open? Like, how'd she get that? And I was like, oh, I did that. She handed it to me and I opened it. They're like, yeah, but she hasn't eaten dinner yet. I was like, well,
Uh-oh.
what the heck, man? So I'm not going to be the uncle that doesn't open something for my niece. Cause like,
Yeah.
what the heck? Of course. Like, they're like, yeah, but I was like, so I'm the cool uncle, man. I'm never yelling at any of them. I'm never doing any of that
There
stuff.
you go. That's
They're
awesome.
getting
Well,
whatever
I'm
they
lucky to have
want,
you.
you know?
Lucky to have you. That's awesome. Gotta love it.
Yeah. So, but heck yeah. Tonight, though, to the audience, Mai-Coh has some really interesting stuff she would like to spill over to us and
Yes.
help us nerd out because, yes, she has been so busy lately, but her mind is like mine, a sponge. So she is always collecting epic information that has been stored in the good old file cabinet. When we do get a
Absolutely.
chance to sit down, well, here comes the information. So I'm going to toss you the mic and tell everyone
Thanks.
else you've been up to inside the cryptid field. Have you been studying anything
Yes.
lately or what?
Oh man. Well, I love like the mesh of like paleontology and cryptozoology, all of that stuff. But what I came here to talk about, okay, it's it's a little bit because of Star Fox, but I was like, okay, if I have a chance to go to the land between the lakes, I like to take that chance. Now, you know, I live a few hours away, so it's not like I'm over there every time. But if I'm heading that direction, and if I'm going to pass by there, it's like I know this place is steeped in cryptid lore and possibly some scary stuff, right? So I got to be careful. I got to be careful. But given given what it is, how could I not check it out, right? So back in the summertime, I went on a little road trip, see a friend, and it was like, oh, it'll just add like 20 minutes to go through the LBL. I'm gonna do it. I don't need to stop much. I want to go ahead and see her, whatever. But I gotta see it. I'm gonna take some pictures for Star Fox. Like I want him to have like real photos of this place, right? Because I'm gonna be right by there. How could I not stop? I want to see it for myself. So I did, and it was cool. And I was like, oh look, there's an elk and bison prairie. Man, I wish I had time to stop. Like that was really neat. But I was like solo road tripping to see my friend for a few days, and my husband had the kids at home, right? So that was cool, and I had that little adventure. But I was like, when I come back, I've got to check out the elk and bison prairie. It's gonna be cool. I haven't gone out cryptid hunting, and if something's living way out there where it's really hard to get to, maybe it doesn't want to be bothered, so I probably shouldn't bother it. but but also it's like I also I want to just see it, right? So I found myself literally just a couple weeks ago. Um, yeah, like 2 weeks ago today, I was passing through there, and this time I was road tripping to see my friend, but I had the kids with me. So I knew I was going to have to be extra careful. There was going to be no running around in the wilds. There was going to be no finding a random pull off where no other humans are in sight and letting them play freely. No, not really. Please, no. They are young. They are vulnerable. I will not do that. Okay. But I was like, they would really they would love to go drive through the elk and bison prairie, like, be like, oh yay, buffalo, yay, big deer. Like they were super stoked about that idea. So on our way back, we had time, so we swung through there. Now I have to mention the first time I went to the LBL, um, even though it's super face rollingly easy, I kind of got a little bit lost. um, it didn't take much. I figured it out pretty quickly. I lost a little bit of time to it, but now I know what I'm doing. Okay, so this is a long strip of land. There's a northern part. There's a highway that runs basically north to south called the Trace. Um, so we came in, as we were passing back through, we came in through the top, like at the northern end, and we were driving down the Trace. Um, so we hadn't gotten to the elk and bison prairie yet. For those of you who are familiar with the land between the lakes, there's a visitor center near Golden Pond, and the elk and bison prairie is like literally super close to that. So all that stuff is like kind of central, kind of in the middle. And so if you're traveling like across the LBL, just through the like east to west to east. It's not super long because it's actually, pretty tall and thin. But if you're going down the trace, going north to south, whatever, it's quite a bit longer. Um, so the elk and bison prairie is off of the trace. But when we were driving along, let's see, I pulled over, I think, to take a picture of like the welcome sign. Didn't let anybody get out. I'm trying to remember why I had to pull over again. And this is in the northern part of the LBL off the trace. And there's something you got to understand about the land between the lakes. Um, even off the main highways, there are so many like gravel, rough little roads that just go off to the sides. Like, I'm sure people who go out there to like hunt and fish all the time are familiar with a lot of those. I certainly am not, and I certainly was not going to go like adventuring with small children. And by the way, there's really basically no cell service either. It's bizarre how like you go over the bridge and like boom, no cell service. So I really didn't want to get turned around back in there. So there's all these little pull-offs, and they go down who knows where. Some of them clearly go down like towards the water, some of them, who knows. And some of them are gated and some of them are closed off. Anyway, I don't remember why we had to stop. I think maybe I don't know if one of my kids like dropped a drink and I was worried that it was like spilling in the car. Um, Whatever was going on, I also had to get something out of the back of my minivan. So, we pull in, we pull off, and this was like a little closed, one of these little side roads, but it was gated, it was shut. But I just needed somewhere convenient. And I wasn't planning to stop somewhere like this, but I had to. So I cleaned up whatever like the little mess was. I dealt with whatever I needed in the back of the van. And while we were stopped, I didn't let any of my kids get out. They're strapped into their car seats. My oldest could have gotten out if she'd wanted to, but I didn't invite her to. She's the only one who's not like in a multi-point, harness type of car seat. Like, my youngest is 3. So stopped, took care of stuff. I did take some pictures. I took a couple of panoramas. I took a couple of just normal pictures, like of the road with the gate across it. The little dirt road going off the side into the woods. This is hey, like this is land between the lakes. Here we are. It wasn't particularly scenic, but let's just document it, right? Um, so anyway, I'll tell you about the rest of the day and the other interesting thing that happened later. So I get home. Like, let's skip to the future for a minute. I'm home and I decide to look at these pictures, right? And I was just kind of like looking at the foliage. The pano, it turned out really good, like pretty crisp for how big it was. So I'm well, once you zoom in to like super close, it's not super crisp. But I was zooming in and checking stuff out, like seeing if, seeing what was there and if I got anything cool. And I saw it looked very strange. I was like, did I get a picture of a dogman? Because what I saw was it looked kind of like a little canid face right by the gate, kind of by the tree and stuff. And it looked like 2 almost glowing eyes. And it really looked like something. And now I was like, okay, I know sometimes people say, oh, look, I got a picture of this. And it's like just shadows and twigs, or maybe they saw something with their eyes that their camera didn't see. Or maybe a lot of people will say that your camera can catch things that your eyes can't see. I don't know. I certainly didn't notice anything strange when I was taking the picture. But of course, I'm looking at it later. I was like, ooh, that looks really suspicious. That looks really like something. I was like, this is probably nothing. But I was like, well, there are some pretty good, I'm thinking about, okay, well, Scott Carpenter, he had like cameras pointing behind him and like he got some shots and it would show like, it actually looked like something. And then the way you could tell it was really maybe a thing was you could see that exact spot, like you could see something move out of the way. And like then that exact spot, like between that exact tree and bush was like empty, like right there. So something obviously was there and then it wasn't. So it's not just a branch or a twig or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at my other photos of this spot. So I looked at my other pano that I took from the exact same vantage point, and it looked a little different, but it still looked kind of like a little black canine face with kind of, bright eyes. Um, but I was like, that's it's sort of the eyes sort of changed position a bit. They got a little bit closer together. I'm not sure about that. um, And so I found the other pictures I took from a slightly different vantage point, right? Um, and like from like the other side of my van, and it was like a clump of of leaves, like dark colored, like maybe like dark curled up, like oak leaves, like, like a branch maybe had fallen in a storm, like a small branch. And so the leaves were like, really, but like maybe it happened in the summertime. So even though it was winter now, they were all still like attached to the branch, kind of like in a ball of like leaves still stuck to it. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it looked kind of like that. So it obviously was not a dog head, I guess, unless it suddenly went into leaves, which is not how these things work, I don't think. Anyway, I was a little disappointed because I was like, wow, for a second there, I thought I might have gotten a picture of a dog man, but it would have had to have been a baby dog man because I sent Star Fox the pictures and he can throw them up there. Compared to the gate height, it was low. Like it was, it obviously wasn't like a coyote or something that would have been gray. It was almost really dark black, and it was too low. It definitely wasn't like, oh, 7 feet tall. It would have been small, or crouched down, but still, it wasn't super huge. Um, Alas, I think it was nothing. um, so it was a little disappointing, but also because I would rather be disappointed and know the truth than to be, than to believe whatever I want to believe and be deluded, I guess. So I'm so glad actually that I took another picture of that vantage, like from a slightly different vantage point, so I could see everything from a slightly different angle. Because if that had really been something, I feel like it would have still looked like something, you know, and there, or it would have just been gone. But instead of nothing being there or it looking like that from a different perspective, it just like looked like a poof of leaves. Alas. um, but yeah, I would rather be disappointed than to just believe something that isn't true. That's you know Sometimes I'm afraid that I'm going to see something because I want to see something. So, got to guard against that, I guess. Humans, we're all prone to wanting things very badly, and I know I'm not immune to fooling myself, and I don't think many other people are immune to that either. But yeah, so that was my little story there with like, oh, look what I got. Just kidding, it wasn't something. But I can see how, if I had not taken those second pictures, I always would have wondered. I always would have thought, wow, maybe that was something. Maybe I really saw a little dog man with glowing eyes. Like that would have been so cool. But like, I'm also glad I have the second pictures because now like I can know for sure. So it really hit home to me, like I need to be doing that regularly. Like if I'm taking a picture of an area that feels cryptidy or seems like it might be of interest, I really should take more than one photo, and like from a slightly shifted vantage point, like not enough that you can't see everything that's in the original picture, but enough that it's going to make it clear what is, actually consistently a thing versus what's a trick of the light and shadow and foliage and whatever. um so that really hit home to me about that. I'm gonna be careful to be taking extra pictures. I have the idea of possibly putting on like, a back camera on my backpack or whatever if I go out in the woods. Because I mean, some people have caught some interesting things that way. But I think if I do that, I'm gonna get two. I actually have two. They're kind of cheap, but maybe I'll do that because if I'm gonna have one, I might as well have two. I really don't want to delude myself into thinking something is there. But it's not. It's just, and some people say they have like a sixth sense and they know when something is hiding in a picture. I don't have that. I'm so sorry. I'm on the science team. I'm a doubting Thomas. I have to see the
Mhm.
evidence. you know.
Great stuff right there. I
So that
appreciate
was,
all of
yeah.
that. Gnarly. And also, like you said, though, that just shows to everyone out there, you just need to understand sometimes that because of how we always search for answers, it makes it that, yeah, like you said, sometimes just through evolutionary aspects, I mean, we had interactions with giant predators and other
Right.
hominoids that consumed us or took our
Hmm.
stuff, whatever. We are predisposed to see that because
Yes.
that is why we have survived. I mean, it's a
Yes.
messed up study to an extent, but I mean, the parents signed on to it, and I mean, they were there and the scientists and such, but these children that couldn't speak, okay, so you have little toddlers, and they would show
Babies are
them
told, yeah.
these images that were giant spiders, giant snakes, crocodiles. What did they do? They cried, okay?
Aw.
And when they showed them bunny rabbits, butterflies, dolphins, things like that, they don't cry, they smile and laugh and stuff. Right
Mm,
there, why is a toddler who's never had contact with that having that reaction?
mm.
Because it just shows you that it's embedded in us for
Right.
survival
It's
aspects.
baked in. And like a false alarm thinking that you see a predator in a bush is probably not going to like cause you to perish and
No.
not pass on your genes. But not noticing one that is there could
Boom.
very well lead to your demise.
So
We have
that's
mad pattern recognition.
yes. That's why it's a great example of how you had mentioned that, because I always do try to state that to people. Certain things are just all right. So I'll give a couple of examples. I could be out driving with my uncle and think that I see you driving by. I swear it's your face, your van. Wow, hey, look, it's my friend Mai-Coh. I wave. Lady looks back like, who the frig are you, dude? Hey, I guess. And then you're like, wait, that wasn't her. Oops. Or say if you, myself, and two other people go out to look at something, or we start a DNA study, it doesn't matter. Everyone is approaching something differently, meaning, let's start with a DNA study. Okay, you could be approaching it as you believe that it's prehistoric human. I could be approaching it as I believe it's canine. This third person could be having a completely neutral viewpoint as to when they're starting it. And then this
Maybe
fourth
they don't
person,
even know what you're studying, so it's like double blind,
yes,
right? Like they don't even know
yes,
what this even is, so they're just studying it as if it's a random sample, totally unknown.
yes. And then the fourth person thinks it might be a feline or something. Everyone is going to be starting from that different point level to end up having that type of reaction, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Whereas, same thing if we're going out into the wilderness, I could be like, oh, that's got to be a dogman. You could be like, no, that's just got to be a known predator. This person could be like, what? That doesn't sound like any of that. And then this person could be like, what do you mean? They're getting beamed up to the UFOs, you know?
Right. And someone else is like, oh, that's a furry, dressed up as doing a photo shoot in the woods or whatever. Yeah.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
any
So that's
number
why
of things.
it's so good to be able to just show examples of that to people and have them actually understand. I mean, it's a real thing. It's not as if, we're sitting here making these up. I mean, there's
Mm,
statistics and things that fall into that.
right.
So that's a
Right.
great example, as you
Exactly.
had just showed right there. And
Yeah.
I know Nuxium, for example, believes that some of these Dogman, the canine versions, are wolves that have watched humans over hundreds of thousands of years of how we act and how we move, and
They've essentially
realize
evolved, right?
that's what he seems to think. Yes. How do you
Yeah.
feel about that?
Wow. Honestly, like I saw that video too, and I have to respect his perspective as like a master tracker and also like his like, you know, deeply connected indigenous perspective because, you know, I have some ancestry, but I'm disconnected tribally, you know, thanks to the boarding school thing and whatever. I'm going to respect his position as far more of an authority on that than I could ever be. Um, I don't actually understand how that could happen, but I also, I don't know. It doesn't seem as impossible as some of the other possibilities that I've heard. um, because,
Yeah.
well, if you think about, you've probably seen those pictures of like unalived, like gray wolves, really big
Hmm.
ones, or like timber wolves, like really big ones, and they're like hung up, and people are like, "Oh, that's a dog man," and it's
No,
yeah, maybe
that's
it's
a
like
wolf.
7 feet long, but no, it's a wolf. It's literally a natural wolf. It is big, and so I could see how oh, it's just their bodies are so I feel like it would almost still take some kind of supernatural or some sort of intervention to allow them to be able
Yes.
to in so short of a time, I'm saying short, a few tens of thousands of years or however long people have been in the Americas. It's probably longer than we think, but still, like humans themselves haven't even been around for like millions of years as a Homo sapiens
Hmm.
species, right? So that's a lot of time. That's not a lot of time to go from four-footed to completely upright. We spent a long
Hmm.
time messing around becoming upright ourselves. It took a lot. So part of me is like,
Yes.
how could they become upright in such a short time? if they weren't already trending that way, if they weren't already capable somehow of standing up a bit more. Because of course anything can like sort of tippy toe, but wolves essentially are walking on tippy toe already compared to our foot bones. Like, it's another of the hand
Yes.
drawn things of comparing all the leg bones and stuff, and the foot bones. Like, we have our heels that touch the ground when we walk, but with canids, sometimes, well, I don't know about Dogman, but with like wolves and dogs, like they're sort of hopping around on their little tippy toes. Like, their heels look like that's like the backward facing part of their leg. That looks like their knee that faces backwards. It's actually their heel.
Mhm.
Um, so that's that would be a really big change. But yeah, Nooksim, he's real. Like, he's legit. He's a smart dude. So I don't know. That's as good a theory as any, because I don't know if I even have a real good theory. I like to play with lots of different ones, but maybe it's a giant raccoon holdover. Maybe it really is a canid. Like, honestly, like, raccoon skulls look so canine that most wolf skull tattoos are actually raccoon skulls. But like, because that's the reference thing that comes up first if you look up wolf skull tattoo. It's this raccoon skull. It has the same chipped tooth. Everyone uses it. I think we've talked about this before. Sorry, but like, it could be anything. I don't know. The one thing I do, the one thing I am a little bit more sure about, even though I can't explain why they are here and why they do what they do. Like, I know, like you were saying, like, the volume of eyewitness accounts, like, people can't just be making this stuff up. This can't just be like a random psychosis where everybody is hearing the same things and seeing the same things, like, so much across time and space, similar to the Bigfoot phenomenon.
That's again excellent stuff right there. And you said so many great things right there. And to get a chuckle for yourself, I actually always use that example that you just said, and I always tell
Really?
her about the example that you had said. So
Oh,
that's always
yeah.
so funny about
It's the
the wolf
wreck.
skull and the
Yeah,
raccoon
yeah,
skull. So
yeah.
that's great stuff right there. And
Yeah, people always get mixed up when they find them in a cave too. Like, my
yeah,
fellow cavers, like, that's actually a raccoon. It's not a dog. But people
yeah,
are
I
always a
know,
little
which is
relieved.
so funny. And like you were saying, yeah, it's definitely out of my educational aspects. I mean, in theory, I guess, like you said, but then in theory, it took us for quite a long time. So it is a very interesting
Yeah, that's
aspect. What I'm
yeah.
thinking too, potentially, and
Mm-hmm.
this is just a hypothesis as well,
Mm-hmm.
is when you look at hyenas and things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you know how they're speaking about dogmen and things
Mm-hmm.
using trees a lot, right?
It's
Well,
true.
hyenas like burrows and things, and they're bigger now. So they, again, we're talking about a little bit in the past, but they're related to
Yeah.
mongoose, weasels, ferrets, and stuff. That those things all
Mm-hmm.
love trees and are great climbers. And
Yeah.
hyenas have a weird opposable front thumb. Would it be
True.
so far-fetched to think a hyena would be able to adapt a little bit to use trees more? I mean, it's
Yeah.
in
That's
history, right?
You're right. And here's a really good point about that too. Canids, they've, except for their little dew claw, which is basically nothing, they walk around, dog paw prints, and cats too, for that matter. They have like, they don't have like five little fingers or five digits. Like, you've got like just four toe beans, four paw pads, four toes. And so there, how evolution works. Once something is kind of lost, it doesn't just come back. Like, if it has to come back, it's usually something else has to be, it's sort of in a different form. Um, like, for example, like, whales, they didn't suddenly be like, okay, well, let's just go back to the fish thing and get gills. Like, no, they still have they
Yeah.
might live in the water, but they have to still be mammal. They still have to come up and breathe from the air. Like, they're not just going to suddenly get gills back. So they're in an animal, they don't, if they've lost digits, they usually don't get them back. So a hyena is
Yes.
actually probably a better candidate, right? If they have little thumbs still, they can, that
It
gives
could
them,
evolve,
like,
correct?
everyone talks about the Dogman. They're like, it wasn't paws, it had hands, but with
Yes.
claws. And the claws often sometimes remind people of like cat claws. I don't know, but like, they have claws on hands specifically. So whatever's going on with them, they're not just hopping around with their little dog hands or dog paws, loosely hanging in front of them. They're using their front paws. They have hands. That's definitely something that seems to be pretty universal. Everything we hear about them. At the same time, weirdly, they also seem to be able to go on all fours and it makes it easier for them to pass as like a normal animal, right? Like that's another interesting thing. I don't know if we have time to talk about maybe some examples of hiding in plain sight, but
Yeah, I mean that's all great stuff, and we usually go for like 45, so we got a good another maybe 10 solid minutes here before we gotta let you
glorious.
go. But also
Yes,
real quick,
yes. Uh-huh.
the
Hmm.
the thing with any animal that has opposable or like hands, basically, like you said, if that digit in the hyena was useless, why is it still there? Would it
Mm,
become useless, correct? Like in the dog's, paw
yeah.
and such, but it's not. It still has that strange opposable thumb, and their front paws are different than their back feet.
Mm,
Whereas, like a canine, they're all four. And
yippee.
any animal with hands, it really makes a huge game changer. I mean, just like with like my squirrel, okay?
Oh
You know,
yeah.
just the being able to hold things, hold on to you, it literally brings a whole new level to a world. And to anyone out there, yeah, squirrels' claws are gnarly. Imagine two now look at how big their claws are compared to like a raccoon claw. Imagine that. I think a dogman hand might look like a giant squirrel paw, dude. That's some
Actually,
scary stuff.
dude, you're right, because like squirrel claws compared to the size of their little hand
Are
are actually
huge.
really big. Exactly. Like,
Yes.
sure, they're tiny compared to like us, but like for the size of that
Yeah, they're pretty
hand, they
gnarly
are
claws.
huge.
Yes, and
That's
they're
a
sharp
good
as
point.
heck.
Uh-huh.
And then you'd be able to climb the trees. You could cut up things,
Mm-hmm.
and the claw looks it's like a dark black like that. And Jody has some strange claw down in Texas out of a tree that has
Whoa.
that same type of dark coloring to it.
So interesting.
Yeah, it really
Ooh, so cool. That's amazing. I love that.
is.
Very cool.
Yeah, so what was the other thing you'd like to
Oh,
touch
yes.
real quick?
Okay. Yes.
Right.
This is also from my LBL excursion. Okay. Which is really, compared to some of the stories that people have come out of there, the things they've experienced, especially when they're actively looking for stuff. Some people have encountered some strange things, unsettling things too. So mine is pretty much, a nothing burger compared to that. But something else did happen that was very interesting, just informative, and it was really vividly, it illustrated something to me. I gotta tell you about this. So shortly after we had stopped and not taken a picture of a dog man, apparently, um we pulled in, paid our little $5. The story behind the elk and bison prairie is, some years ago they noticed, biologists noticed, like native prairie grasses were still hanging on in some places in this particular area of the park, which, Tennessee used to have a lot more natural prairie, right? And Kentucky and all of this. So this was a big deal. So they're like, hey, let's restore this area. So they're trying to, they helped bring the prairie grasses back and turn this into a natural like prairie, like restored it. But also, if you're gonna have a prairie, you gotta have things that will graze it. Like prairie grasses, a lot of kinds of grasses, they need things that will graze them down. They need things to walk on them. And like if you just let them grow by themselves, you're like, oh, don't touch it, it's special. Like if nothing is eating on them, they kind of just sort of get overgrown, and they actually they don't thrive, and they don't spread as well. Like grass is super tough, and it likes to be used weirdly. So they have this prairie, and they have bison, and they have elk. And elk are, you know, everyone knows what a bison and buffalo looks like. And of course, the elk is like a deer, but it's bigger, and it is a deer, but it's got, really big antlers. Of course, these are both native to Tennessee and Kentucky, the whole region. We just mostly don't have them anymore. Certainly not in the wild. Well, we have some elk in the wild in the Smokies as well, but you're not just going to see one, randomly, driving along, out on 840 outside of Murfreesboro or something. It's just not going to happen. So they're in an enclosure, right? They have these really high fences around this, and it takes, I don't know how long. It's the loop is a few miles. So you drive your car slowly through this loop, and so here we are at the start of it. My kids are really young. Only the oldest was really able to help look for things. We hadn't seen anything yet, but of course, I've heard a lot of stories about the cryptids. Some people, they speculate that maybe these big herbivores are food for some of the cryptids in the park. I don't know. I don't know. Uh, I noticed the bison had ear tags, like they had numbers, like they're tracking who these bison are and like what they're doing. Like they keep track of them. So it's just like a cow. Um, but we hadn't seen these yet. And I did see off in the woods, sort of down, down the hill. There were no cars around. There was not no traffic, but I noticed what looked kind of like possibly a Bigfoot stick structure. I don't know very much about all of that, and I don't really, I've only just been starting to learn about that stuff, right? And I'm a noob, but I was like, you know what, that looks interesting enough and like suspiciously not random enough that I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of it just in case it's something I can ask somebody who knows later. And it was just kind of a matter of luck that I saw it. The light was kind of shining right down into that patch of woods and just sort of illuminating these slanted trees. And so I pulled off and I was taking pictures, and my kids were like, "Why are you stopping here?" I'm like, "Oh, I just want to take a picture of these trees or whatever." You know, I don't want to scare them and be like, "Oh, maybe Bigfoot lives here." Whatever. I don't want to scare them. But they're stuck in the car anyway. They just want to see a buffalo. And then I noticed after I started taking pictures, my vehicle's it's in park. I'm totally stopped. It took me a while, and I probably wouldn't have even noticed it except that it moved. There was actually an elk right there, like between me and the woods. Like, I don't know. It it wasn't like right by the car. It was a little bit downhill, and there were these really tall, like native grasses. So when its head was down, like its body was mostly like the legs and stuff were completely hidden, and you could just see like its back. And if it put its head up, you could see its head, or if it walked, you could see it. And if it hadn't moved, I probably would have noticed it eventually, but maybe not. I felt very silly. I'm like, "Oh, guys, look, there's an elk right here." And then it took us so it was a female elk. And then like it took us even longer to notice there were two epic bull elks like between the female elk and the woods, and they had their heads down grazing, and it was even harder to see. But again, like we were there. We were looking for animals, and we didn't even see them. I parked to take a picture of a stick structure, and then this thing is like right there, right there. But like her coat, this elk, it was pretty much the same color on average as the surroundings. And the ones that were further back, their bodies were even more obscured. Their glorious, antlers were pretty much down. But is when they put their heads up and they started walking around and sort of walking up the hill, kind of towards the female, and sort of thus a little bit towards us. That was when I was like, "Oh, look at that!" Because I was like, "Look, you know, there's a male one. Look at the antlers." And then my daughter was like, "Oh, look, there's another one. There's three." So I didn't even spot all of them. She had to point one out to me. And these are huge animals, right? And they were right by the road. I swear, I would have driven by and never seen it if I hadn't stopped to look at that stick structure. And I mean, let's talk about hiding in plain sight. Talk about hiding. People are like, "Oh, you have sharp eyes." I do not. I'm apparently not. I was oblivious. So, other situations I've been told I have sharp eyes. In this situation, I did not. But it was very interesting too, because I was like, well, this elk is perfectly adapted. Their winter coats are like they match their surroundings perfectly. If they don't move, it's and if they're not standing somewhere where their body outline is visible, it is very hard to see them. And it just got me thinking, like, if something else was there, if something else was obscured and it knew to like hide the outline of its face and body, if it was peering through you know cracks between trees and branches and foliage, like there could be a lot of things if it just stands still. But a lot of people say that some of these cryptids, like, they're really good at hiding in plain sight. It looks like, wow, they'll even think, wow, that tree is thicker than normal. What's going on with that? It's like they don't even think, hey, there's something standing there behind it near my house, and and then later it's like, oh, then they see like a Bigfoot walk away from there. I've heard such quite a few stories like that, where it's like, wow, that tree looks different than usual. And they don't even think there is a creature there. So imagine, like, we're dealing with a lot of these cryptids we assume have definitely like higher than just normal animal intelligence, right? And so if regular animals that aren't really being that still, or not really even trying to hide, if they can just disappear in plain sight, like any deer hunter will tell you, like, deer have a way of just disappearing or appearing out of nowhere. Like, you know, I didn't even know that thing was there until it moved, or I had it. I don't know where it went, but it went into this thick area, and now it is totally gone. I have no idea. Like, it happens. It really happens. So, and these are just normal animals. So it's something with a higher intelligence, like if it knew how to conceal its body, the shadowy areas of, if something had dark fur and knew to sort of hide in the shadowy areas, like I could see how even in the winter, just like that, like I could see how something could hide in plain sight. And I could see how something, you know, obviously the easiest thing to do would be avoid roads, avoid areas with people if you don't want to be seen. But I could even see if something was curious and wanted to like eyeball us a little bit, it wouldn't be so hard. It wouldn't be so hard to find somewhere with a good vantage point with no real exposure from any side and just sit very, very still. I could see it happening because that elk had me totally fooled. Eventually, of course, we went a little further down and we saw more elk in the fields. We saw like the bison, they were all up beside the road and walking across the road, and lots of cars were stopped, and it was super exciting. And there were baby ones and mommy ones, and anyway, it was cool. It was very neat. But it was definitely a stark lesson in like, look at this enormous animal. I literally would have missed it, and it was right there, right there.
Right? Excellent stuff right there. And that's what I mean to everyone about how animals can just really hide themselves. I mean, before we let you get going to your busy
Hmm.
schedule, look at a large cat such as a tiger. A tiger
Hmm.
is absolutely enormous, but it does that whole blending in where it pushes itself down completely almost flat to the grass, where you're only going to see its ears pop up. That it's cloaking right there. And I don't really
Hmm.
necessarily buy into the predator style cloaking, but when I refer to cloaking, that's what I mean. I mean, when a predator completely flattens itself out, wolves do it too. I mean, anyone can look at that video from Saskatchewan up in Canada where that guy's walking his dog like a bozo, lets his dog go up to this. You don't even see it at first, like you were saying. I mean, until you've seen the video numerous times, okay? The very first time I saw this video, I did not see this huge wolf until it stood
Oh,
up. But at first,
yes, I've seen that one.
yeah, you can see its
It's
ears
out of
now when you
nowhere.
rewatch it.
Hmm.
Yes. So when
Once
I
you
rewatch
know
it,
that's right
you're like,
there.
it's there. But when you don't, like you said, you don't see a damn thing. And then it's just like, boom. And that's a massive wolf, like right there. And
Right,
also,
right there.
touch, yeah, like you were saying, how big they are, okay? Because people don't realize that we, at a point in time, released, Canadian wolves into Yellowstone. Those are pretty big, but recently there was a picture floating around, to each their own. I don't get down like that. I love animals. I think they should have been out and about. But yes, there is
Mm,
a Canadian wolf that is jet black up beside a Yellowstone wolf hanging. And the
mm.
difference is absolutely mind-boggling about how much
Wow.
bigger the one from Canada is, even though the one in
Yes.
Yellowstone has Canadian lineage in it. You're
Right.
like,
Up
what the
north, things
frick?
are big. They've got to be. I hear the Bigfoot are bigger there too.
Yes,
You got it.
everything is.
Everything's big. Got to stay warm. Oh.
Yes. And on a final note, too, with you being down in the area that you had spoken about, that's what I try to explain to
Yes.
people when they find these canine tracks or these wolf tracks. Okay, they're like, oh, this has to be a dog man. There's no canines down here except maybe a red wolf or coyote. Well, what if I tell people, again, fact check me, look at science, that wolves like to travel anywhere from 350 miles from their original radius. Okay, they will travel just to go figure out what's going on, and they'll feed like around 35 miles away from their den. That's a pretty far
Wow.
radius. Okay, so 350 miles, right? We know that you got timber wolves, you got gray wolves up in the Michigan area and such. Again, like Nuxium says, animals always go back to their original habitat, which is why the jaguars came back up to Arizona recently,
Mm-hmm.
etc. It's not
Yes.
hard to think a wolf or wolves are coming down per se from Michigan and just scoping
Right.
out areas to
Right.
see who else is around, where food is, and then they go back to their original den area. So
It's possible. Yeah.
yeah, it's not hard to think that someone actually does see a timber wolf track in Tennessee,
It's
but it's
possible.
not staying
Exactly.
there forever. It went back up to where it was.
Right. And there's even large dog breeds that are prone to wandering, like Great Pyrenees. They're these big white fluffy, herd dogs, but they will wander really far and they are big. So it's possible to even see a domestic dog print out in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
I mean, okay, probably not going to be like, 20 miles deep in a national park, but like if you're in a rural area, like it even could be a domestic dog, even if there's no human boot tracks nearby.
Yes.
You just never know.
Exactly. Great stuff again. And is
Happy.
there anything else you would like to touch
Um,
base on before we let
I
you
don't.
roll?
Yeah, I don't think so. Other than like the remember the mountain lion, the puma that came all the way from the Black Hills. Didn't make it. It made it up to the East Coast, right?
Yes,
Like
but I've
it came.
spoken about that. Yes, and it got
Yes,
hit,
yes,
and it was
yes.
trying to
So sad.
basically go out and spread its lineage. So
But
that's a
right, a
prime
young
example right
male.
there.
So
Yes.
that one was actually documented, and so everyone actually believes. My husband may have seen it beside the interstate, but that's a side thing. It was in the same time frame, but like it was something that happened. Like, and people actually are like, this is documented officially. So it's not like, oh, this is a cryptid, and no one believes that you saw it. But like someone some years ago, like literally, like probably less than a quarter mile from where I'm standing right now, there was a very credible like cougar sighting, not a black panther, but just like a normal like puma, and it was right out here, and it was just, it's kind of this kind of rural area. There's some pretty desolate ridges and a lot of pasture land, and like it was probably doing the same thing, but this was years ago, like literally like in the 90s, before like game cameras were such a big thing. So it was never, I don't think it was ever documented, but like this wasn't somebody who was prone to flights of fancy, and other people actually saw it. I don't know if it's still around. I kind of hope so, kind of. I don't know. um it's been a long time though. It would have to be its descendants. Anyway, yeah. So animals range far. I don't mean to go on a side trail. I know we're wrapping up, but
No,
it
it's
is
not. It's
true.
not at all. It
It's
follows
so
into right what you're
exciting.
saying. Yeah, it just
Yeah,
shows
but
you that if you and I can do something like per se, the trails that lead from like what Maine down to
yeah.
what is it? The Appalachian is it?
Oh yeah, the Appalachian Trail, of course.
Yes.
Yes.
So if we
Yes.
as people can go
We
that, and
could
that's
do
half
it.
of the East Coast, why
Hmm.
could a animal not go from Maine to California if it really wanted to? That's not that
Right.
big an issue.
Right. And just because the normal dispersion is less, there's always, you occasionally, I heard you talking about like sometimes it's like a massive bear that's like so much bigger and more aggressive than the others. Again, there's going to be like variability where there's that 1 in 100 or 1 in
Hmm.
500 or 1 in 1,000 that ranges farther, like that cougar that made it all the way until it got hit. Like there's going to be a few that behave a
Think
little
how
bit
many more do
differently.
it too, right? That don't get
Yeah.
hit. Huh?
Right, exactly, exactly. If you think about a bell curve, just because like the vast majority of things fall within a certain like expected behavior or expected characteristics, there's still the far ends of the bell curve, right, where it's really different from the norm. And it's just going to be a few, vanishingly few, but that is there, and that's normal for like any population.
Yup, great stuff, my friend. And well, to the audience, yes, we do need to allow Mai-Coh to get back to what it is she needs to do. But
Yeah, better
there
head
is
home.
a playlist that all of our stuff is always up there, so you can check out older episodes if you'd like to listen. And also, do please go check out her artwork. It is something that is completely customized, and she has great products. Don't worry, we will also have her back here very soon, so it is nothing to be too upset about. And
I'm
on a
looking forward
parting
to it.
note, yes, like one of my favorite quotes says in science, every time you think you find the biggest, no, because it wasn't smart enough. The biggest, baddest are the smartest ones that you're never going to see until you see them and they're done.
Isn't that right?
Yes, thank you to every single one of you legends. If you did make it this far tonight, please like, comment, subscribe, share, and feed the algorithm. We really do appreciate you.